Atlantic Vistas, now a historic and familiar part of our nation's story. But at one time, sights like these were beyond imagining. 5 centuries ago, when the lands we know today as the Americas lay unknown to the world outside, this was terra incognita, the dwelling place perhaps of dragons and demons. Yet many of these wonders were well known to the native peoples who were scattered across this land. Some places held sacred, others settled in nurturing tribal life. A few locations feared, avoided, and shunned. Other natural treasures lay unseen by any human eye. A number of these Atlantic vistas remain today much as they were, in the region where the first explorers and adventurers discovered the wonders of the New World. Mount Desert Island on the coast of Maine. It is here that the sun first rises above the horizon and touches the shores of the United States of America. The first rays of sunlight reveal a domain of crashing waves against the jagged coastline, of dramatic headlands, of evergreen-bound lakes and mountains of granite. It must have appeared much as it does today to the first European to venture here almost 4 centuries ago, the Frenchman Samuel de Champlain.
This island is very high and cleft onto 7 or 8 mountains. I named it l'Île des Monts Déserts.
In English, this site remains Mount Desert Island, and much of the island will always remain wild, protected within the borders of Acadia National Park. Both this island and the mainland have been inhabited for many generations. In fact, a strong streak of New England tradition runs deep in this region, a place where the human experience has been shaped by the challenge of the sea. It's a salty tradition of independence, pride in craftsmanship, self-sufficiency, and respect for customs handed down from generations past.
Oh, the biggest thing is I think it's just the independence that you have by being a lobster fisherman. You don't have to answer to a lot of different people. You're your own boss, go your own pace. I like the independence part of it, and I like the harder you work, the more you get out of it. I've been lobster fishing for 30 years, out of Bar Harbor and around the shores of Acadia. Once you're a fisherman and get addicted to it, there's you never think of retirement. It's something you're going to do until you're either physically unable to do it or you die.
Another link to the past has undergone significant change during the last century. The role of this region as a summertime retreat for the families of wealth, privilege and power. By 1900, many of the leading families of New York, Boston, and Philadelphia society were spending their summers in and around Eden, as Bar Harbor was then called. The 50 and 60 room mansions they euphemistically dubbed cottages were settings for elegant balls and gala dinner parties. Names on the guest lists included Vanderbilts, Astors, Carnegies, Rockefellers, Morgans, and Fords. Magnificent yachts rode at anchor in the protected harbors. The music of the era drifted through the formal gardens of some 200 opulent estates. But that age of extravagance began to fade with the Great Depression of the 1930s, was inappropriate to the wartime America of the 1940s, and was virtually terminated by fire in 1947. Flames of uncertain origin swept across 10,000 acres of Mount Desert Island, turning many of the stately summer homes to ashes. The great legacy of that genteel era of the summertime millionaires is Acadia National Park. It was a group of those summer residents who donated some of their own properties. The government has been adding other pieces to the park over the years. In 1919, Acadia became the country's first national park east of the Mississippi. John D. Rockefeller Jr. made particularly generous donations, including almost 1/3 of the total parkland, as well as a network of charming carriage roads. Rockefeller planned these carriage roads as an alternative way to enjoy Acadia without the intrusion of automobiles, and he paid for the construction of the entire 57-mile system with its 16 graceful stone bridges. Today, Acadia National Park and the region that surrounds it are unique. Here is a place where coastal New England can be experienced as it was when the only people were members of the Abenaki tribe who came by birch bark canoes to fish, dig clams, and pick berries. Or the era of the seagoing men who earned a living in the coves and harbors by daring to challenge the power of the Atlantic and the dangers hidden in its fogs. Here in the teeming microhabitat of a tide pool, or along the fjord of Somme Sound, or beside the surging, booming cauldron known as Thunder Hole, the visitor comes very close to the conflict, the interaction, the elemental drama of land meeting sea on the coast of Maine. It is these elements that dominate the mood and define the life in this unique portion of the New England coast. In this same small corner of America, as the warm days of summer cool into autumn chill, one of nature's miraculous transformations takes place. For a few short weeks, New England's rocky hills and valleys ignite in a blaze of color. Far north, where the United States meets Canada, the change is perceptible as early as August. But as fall approaches, the riot of red, yellow, orange, and bronze marches south and usually reaches its peak during the first 2 weeks of October in the clustered woods of Vermont and New Hampshire. This phenomenon has long been a source of inspiration for storytelling and for science. For centuries, Native Americans who made this area their home spoke of red leaves running with the blood of the great bear of the heavens, and of yellow being the cooking fire of the spirits. European settlers brought their own explanations in the form of science. As the weather turns cooler and the days grow shorter, maple, birch, alder, beech, and other broadleaf deciduous trees, so numerous here, no longer produce food in their leaves. The decreasing amount of light and warmth makes the green chlorophyll decompose, revealing the bright colors that have been masked by the green all year. The result is an ever-changing kaleidoscope, different every day, different every autumn, due to tiny variations in heat, rain, and frost. If days are warm, maple trees produce sugar, but a cold night will trap the sugar in the leaf, producing an intense red. The greater the disparity in temperature, the redder the maple. And when at last no nutrients flow to the leaves at all, they wither and drop off. So precious are these brief days of color that each year the government of New Hampshire organizes a dozen or more volunteers from every corner of the state. These leaf peepers call in to report on the latest changes in color as thousands of visitors flock to the White Mountains trying to catch the peak days. The Kankomogus Highway was laid out as a much-needed east-west route through the White Mountains. It offers leaf-watching vistas without parallel, as it winds its way between the Saco and the Pemigewasset valleys. But the Kank, as residents call it, is just one of the scenic wooded avenues among New England's imposing granite hills. At Franconia Notch, nature provided a convenient mountain pass through which early pioneers clamored to establish farms, mills, and eventually the church-steepled villages that today characterize so much of the New England landscape. Later settlers domesticated the more rugged corners of the region, and in 1869 built the world's first and steepest cog railway to scale Mount Washington. The railway was an engineering marvel, a new technology of tilted boilers and cog gears engaging a center rack rail. It still runs today. The settlers also built covered bridges. 54 still stand in New Hampshire alone. Covered to protect the struts and timbers beneath the roadway, these bridges, some would argue, also calmed nervous horses as they crossed the rushing waters below. Among those who may have crossed these bridges were the poets who sang New England's praises. Longfellow, Whittier, and novelist Nathaniel Hawthorne, whose short story, The Great Stone Face, memorializes this peculiar granite outcropping that has come to be known as the Old Man of the Mountain. This brief season of autumn inspired another New England poet, Emily Dickinson.
The name of it is autumn. The hue of it is blood. An artery upon the hill, a vein along the road, great globules in the alleys, and oh, the shower of stain when winds upset the basin and spill the scarlet rain.
And also Robert Frost, who made his home among the stone walls and clapboard houses of rural New England.
The same leaves over and over again. They fall from giving shade above to make one texture of faded brown and fit the earth like a leather glove.
Sensitive to the quiet rhythms of nature and the subtle features of the countryside, Frost transformed this quintessentially American landscape into a setting for our deepest yearnings. In Autumn Leaves, he saw not only the splendor of this sunburst of color, but also its unmistakable melancholy. For as the leaves turn, so do our thoughts to the inescapable winter ahead, when nature's vitality is borne away on the swift current of time. Many of the world's waterfalls are higher. Some have a more graceful beauty or a more pristine setting. But Niagara Falls has the great force, the massive power to inspire and to mesmerize. It is little wonder that the first European to describe the falls, the French missionary and explorer Louis Hennepin, reported that the waters of Niagara drop an exaggerated 600 feet, or that another 17th century traveler described the falls as 800 feet high. Actually, they are less than a quarter of that, between 167 and 175 feet. But to this day, the torrent of smashing water warps human judgment and challenges the imagination. Scores of writers and painters have attempted to capture this massive vision of cascading water. One such early visitor was the Irish poet Thomas Moore, who beheld the falls in 1804 and was awestruck.
I have seen the falls, and I am all rapture and amazement. I felt as if approaching the very residence of the deity. It is impossible by pen or pencil to convey even a faint idea of their magnificence.
Another writer, the British wit Oscar Wilde, was less reverent.
Niagara Falls is simply a vast, unnecessary amount of water going the wrong way and then falling over unnecessary rocks.
Others have been inspired in a more active, if less poetic, manner. They saw Niagara as a personal challenge and perhaps a way to riches, or at the very least, notoriety. In 1829, a daredevil named Sam Patch built a platform out over the maelstrom and jumped off, twice. He survived his rapid descent over the precipice both times and became the first to challenge the falls on a one-to-one basis. But he would not be the last. Over the years, many daredevils have risked their lives in tightly enclosed drums, barrels, or similar contraptions. And not everyone in that procession of odd entrepreneurs has survived the challenge. The falls themselves will one day perish as well. The reason? The very force that makes the Cascades of Niagara unique, the mighty volume of water, is itself slowly wearing away the rocks that create the falls. The Niagara is one of the shorter rivers in America, only about 35 miles long, but the waters of 4 of the 5 Great Lakes flow between its banks. At times, this one river carries more water than Europe's Thames, Seine, Loire, Rhine, and Rhone rivers combined. And all that rushing torrent roars over the precipice of either American Falls Bridal Veil Falls, or the great curved brink of Horseshoe Falls, cascading in spectacular curtains of thundering water and swirling mist. The mighty waters wear away the rock at the brink of the precipice with such force that over the centuries the falls have moved upriver 7 miles. The gorge that stretches below is the aftermath. Engineering surveys kept for 150 years reveal that the ledge of Horseshoe Falls is receding at an average of 3 feet a year. Sometimes huge chunks of rock drop off, as they did at American Falls in 1931 and again in 1954, piling up debris at the base. But most of the wear is in small increments as the softer underlying layers of rock erode. Scientists believe that when the falls have cut their way upstream about another 2 miles, the great cascades of leaping water will begin to get lower and diminish into mere rapids, then eventually into one very swift-moving river. However, that change won't even begin for another 2,000 or 3,000 years. That leaves plenty of time for thrill-seekers to put on their slickers and climb aboard the Maid of the Mist to a waterborne, spray-drenched close-up of the cataract. Each year, 6 million visitors come to this place on the border between the United States and Canada to experience its thundering power. Now imagine Niagara Falls frozen in stone and moved to a gigantic cavern far beneath the surface of the earth. This is indeed called frozen Niagara, and it is just one of the fantastic formations lining the tunnels, halls, and twisting corridors of the most extensive cave system in the world. This is Mammoth Cave, the eerie yet majestic subterranean gallery of sculpture created by nature under the forests of Kentucky. At least 3 rivers course through Mammoth Cave. They are often calm and navigable, but at times they may resemble roaring torrents, rising or falling as much as 6 feet in a single hour. These rivers feed lakes so crystal clear that they are all but invisible until the surface is broken. It is with water that nature has excavated, constructed, and adorned this underworld cathedral. About 350 million years in the making, and still being built. On the surface, the Green River cuts across the Kentucky Plateau country, a plain from which most rainwater doesn't run off in creeks and streams, but instead seeps down through the earth. The water picks up carbon dioxide from decaying vegetation on the surface and forms a solution of carbonic acid. This solution drains through cracks in the limestone beneath. It usually moves horizontally toward Green River, dissolving rock along the way and carving out chambers and passageways. As Green River digs a deeper and deeper bed, the water table falls, and the process repeats itself on a lower level, leaving the higher cave network dry. When a cavern near the surface collapses, it leaves a bowl-shaped hole. There are so many of them here that some geologists refer to this region as Southern Sinkhole Plain, and local people know it as the Land of 10,000 Sinks. In some systems outside Mammoth Cave National Park, these holes provide access to water-carved caves. Mammoth Cave isn't the only cave system in the park, but it's the most famous, and combined with the Flint Ridge Caves, it is the longest system anywhere. In fact, nobody knows exactly how large Mammoth is. To date, more than 300 miles of its tunnels and chambers have been charted. Scientific evidence suggests that there may be miles of this astounding natural masterwork still in darkness, unexplored and unseen. Human exploration of the Great Caverns goes back at least 3,000 years, perhaps longer. Many prehistoric artifacts have been retrieved, and numerous charred torches have been discovered as far as 2.5 miles down the winding passageways. Why prehistoric tribesmen mined here for minerals is still a mystery. Perhaps crystals were used for decoration or for trading. Possibly gypsum was utilized for paint, and mirabilite might have had medicinal applications. Legend has it that the first white man here was a hunter who stumbled upon Mammoth Cave while chasing a bear back in 1799. There are still remnants of the saltpeter mines that thrived here during the War of 1812. The British blockade had cut off America's foreign supply of that critical ingredient needed for gunpowder. But it had been found here in the soil lining the floor of Mammoth Cave, and during that war between England and the United States, the ore was mined by slaves and loaded into wooden vats. Water flowing through these pipes, really hollowed out tulip poplar logs, leached out the vital nitrates. The bulk of the ore was sent by ox cart and boat to DuPont, Delaware, for processing into gunpowder. Elsewhere in Mammoth Cave, the visitor comes across this unexpected sight, stone cottages. They date from a medical experiment gone wrong. In 1842, Dr. John Cron tried to cure tuberculosis patients by having them live here, where the air seemed pure and the temperature and humidity were stable. After a few months, 2 men died, and the rest left their dark habitat after showing no improvement in their health. But by then, Mammoth Cave had already become a famous tourist destination. At first by stagecoach, later by train, people came from many parts of the nation, and even from Europe and South America, to see the exotic natural phenomena they had heard existed in the far underground reaches of Kentucky. Millionaires, royalty, celebrities, high society, and the simply curious, they climbed down to see Mammoth's wonders. In 1876, this particular spot inspired the great tragic actor of his day, Edwin Booth, to recite from Hamlet. Or not to be. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble. After that performance, this place became known, of course, as Booth's Amphitheater. It was continuing a tradition started 25 years earlier when the most popular singer of her day, Jenny Lind, the Swedish nightingale, performed while sitting on a nearby formation, since christened Jenny Lind's Armchair. Many of the cave's features were named during the period when public visits first became popular. Passages, rooms, and formations honored not only people, but gods, biblical and mythological places, impressive buildings, streets, and everyday objects. And sometimes it was just a matter of whimsy or humor. Thus, walking through the cave, visitors find themselves at the ruins of Karnak. On Cleveland Avenue, inside the drapery room, beneath Rainbow Dome, or beside the River Styx. But perhaps the most fitting name of all is the most direct, the one for the complex of caverns and for this entire national park as well, Mammoth Cave. It is a unique experience, walking this pathway deep beneath the Earth's surface. John Proctor, former state geologist of Kentucky, wrote almost a century ago,
"We are told that this is the end of the cave, but it's only one of the many ends. And some of the avenues have been closed by fallen rocks or by the stalactite growth. And the real end is yet unknown. A wonderful, mysterious underworld where the spirit of eternal, changeless silence reigns supreme."
Hiking the Blue Ridge Mountains of Appalachia in early spring offers a different experience. The illusion of a time when pristine forests stretched to the horizon. Only moccasins trod the high country trails, and the land was all but untouched. However pleasant, it is a deception.